Today we're going to talk about real numbers. Any number that you see in the next 2 to 3 years in math will be a real number. Sometimes in our workbooks we've had questions that says, is an integer a real number? Anything you see in the next year or 2 or 3 will be a real number, so the answer is going to be yes. Real numbers are made up of 2 types of numbers, rational and irrational. There's no other choice. So this is what it looks like. The real numbers are broken up into rational and irrational. In some workbooks that I've seen, it's shown like this, that the real numbers have the groups rational and irrational inside. But this isn't correct because there's really nothing here. As we're going to see later on in the lesson, the number is either rational or irrational. There is no third choice, so this is absolutely wrong. Now let's have an idea of how this works. Where do you live? Now I'm assuming that most people watching this video are somewhere in Christian County. That's why you come into Hopkinsville Middle School. So let's take a student that lives in Hopkinsville. So they live in Hopkinsville. Okay, so here's Hopkinsville. And then we have other students that live out in the country or at Oak Grove or somewhere else, but they are still in Christian County, and that's why they come to the school here. So here is Christian County. All right. However, the people that live in Hopkinsville are also in Christian County. They're not living in 2 different places. Hopkinsville is inside Christian County, so people who live in Hopkinsville can live in Christian County and Hopkinsville all at the same time because one is inside the other. Now the next thing is, I don't live in Christian County, so I drive in from Todd County over here. However, we are all in Kentucky. So that is our next kind of level, if you will, of where we live. Now the people in Oak Grove live in Christian County, but they're also in Kentucky. Well, are they in Kentucky or are they in Oak Grove? I thought they were in Oak Grove. No, they're in both because both of them is part of that. So here was Christian County. Okay, so Hopkinsville is inside Christian County, which is inside Kentucky. I'm over here in Todd County, and I'm also in Kentucky, but I'm not in Christian County or Hopkinsville as far as living. All right, then we go to the next level, which is the U.S. So we live in the United States. All of us are in the United States. Okay, so then we have the U.S. Now, are the people who live in Hopkinsville, do they live in the U.S. or do they live in Hopkinsville? And the answer is yes, because Hopkinsville is inside Christian County, which is inside Kentucky, which is inside the U.S. So you can be in all these 4 places because they describe different things. You can be in four places at the same time. And then finally, we have what we call the rest of the world. All right, this is just an analogy to help you understand the real number system, and it's not perfect, but it helps you to understand. So now we have the rest of the world. Anything that's not U.S. territory. And all of this makes up Earth. Now, if you are in Hopkinsville, are you in the rest of the world? No, because this is non-US. So at this point, we are not in that part there. We are still in Hopkinsville, which is in Christian County, in Kentucky, in the US. And then we have the US and the rest of the world, and that makes up Earth. And we're going to see how this correlates to our real number system. So the real number system starts off with counting numbers, or what's known as natural numbers. And this is merely 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it goes on to infinity, like that. They're called the counting numbers because if you think back to when you were learning to read, or you're learning your numbers, or if you have younger siblings and they have picture books, they'll start with 1, 2, 3. You'll have 1 dog, 2 cats, 3 ducklings, and so on. So these are the first numbers that we learn. And if you notice, we don't have a 0. Well, back in early history of mankind, when you were struggling just to make ends meet and find enough food, all you worried about was, did you have 1 cow, 2 sheep, 3? You didn't worry about what you didn't have. So there was no need for people to describe 0 of anything. If you were struggling to find food, you didn't worry about having 0 sheep. You just worried about what you did have. But eventually, then, the concept of 0 came along, and it was very feared in some cultures. And so now we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. All right? So the only thing that we've added to the counting numbers to make them into the group of whole numbers is we've added the number 0. So the group of whole numbers is really, even though they go on and on to infinity, the whole numbers is really just one number bigger than the other group. This is hard to understand when we know they go on forever. All right, so this is the same as living in Hopkinsville. The counting numbers are in the whole numbers, just as Hopkinsville is in Christian County. And then after we add the whole numbers, then we can go to the other side of 0. So we have the negatives come into play. And now we have the concept of owing. And goes to infinity that way also. We have the concept of owing something, because negative can refer to owing money or something like that. And again, when you're at the beginning of history, scratching out a living, you're not worried about what you owe, you're just still worried about what you have. Now this is the equivalent of Kentucky. We are in Hopkinsville, in Christian County, and all of that is inside Kentucky. So the counting numbers and the whole numbers are included in the group of integers. So the number 4, for instance, is a counting or natural number. It's a whole number, and it's an integer all at one time. And then we get to rational, and this is a bigger group again. And this simply means can be made into a fraction. All right, and then irrational means cannot be made into a fraction. Now, as you can see, if you can or you cannot be made into a fraction, you cannot be in both the rational and irrational groups at the same time. So the rational numbers is like being in the U.S. You can be in Hopkinsville, in Christian County, in Kentucky, in the U.S., but you can't be in the non-U.S. rest of the world as well. And so we're going to look at the difference between rational and irrational numbers more in a few minutes. But I wanted you to see how you can be a member of more than one group of numbers all at the same time. And it's just as we live in what could be termed as different places all at once, because they describe different things, just as these describe different things.